Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have with us Manas Mishra, Chief Product Officer at PayU India. And for the audience, Manas, I'd like to give a small intro. Manas is leading the product UX and process design team at PayU right now, and is directly responsible for the strategy and the execution of the product at PayU. Before this, he has over 2 decades of experience in industries like payments, e-commerce, IT, and other domains. And before this, he's headed strategic roles in Flipkart, Yahoo, and MediaNet. Thank you so much, Manas, for your time today, and I really look forward to a conversation.
Thank you, Neha. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity, Neha. Looking forward to our discussion.
On that note, I get into our the topic, which is RBI is celebrating observing financial literacy, and this year's theme is Go Secure, Go Digital. That brings me to a very important development which is happening in our country, that everything is getting digitized and payments are at the forefront of it. So that brings me to a very important aspect of it, which is convenience. And my first question to you, Manas, is, and I'm going to read it: when was the last time you withdrew cash, and what do you think are the factors that have led to this change of behavior?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I think I'm not sure if I'm an outlier, but I don't think I have withdrawn cash in last almost 2 years. In fact, I think in the last 2.5 years, I would have probably used ATM once. And this all started with like the COVID and all of us trying to work remotely, trying to do all the transactions remotely. And what has changed? I think if you look back previously in 2014, when demonetization happened, there are a lot of people looking for ATMs, looking for which ATMs has cash availability, and you can see a lot of tech companies trying to solve that problem, right? But from that time, right, last 5 years, there is huge number of digital options that has come up. Our merchants, service providers, any small shops, all of them are digitized, right? So I don't actually feel the need for using cash at all. And once you make that transition to digital payment, right, and it's super convenient, right, the hassle of finding ATM, withdrawing cash, all those hassles are going away, right? You can just do it from your phone. And these days I don't even check whether I'm carrying a wallet when I go out, because I have my phone with me. So I think the technology that we have seen in the evolution of technology that we've seen in last 4 or 5 years has really changed the user behavior.
I agree. Actually, these days, whenever I have to pay cash, I get a little hassle because I don't want to take the change back or something. I think for me, it's just take out my phone, scan a QR, and make a payment.
Right.
So that is faster and, as you said, very, very convenient. So, like consumers like mine, like, do you have any advice for them on who are actually new to digital? Like, I've seen that older generation is now getting comfortable. I'm sure teenagers are picking up, scanning QRs or paying through cards, etc. So what is your advice to them to avoid or detect fraud?
Sure, Neha. I think again, I think a lot of people are getting comfortable with digital payment, but if you're new to like doing payments online using your digital instruments, there are a few very simple things you have to keep in mind. And it's like just like you protect the cash that you carry with you, similarly, you just have to protect your digital instrument when you're transacting online. It's very simple concepts, right? For example, what I follow, like type, don't click. What does that mean, right? So if somebody sends you an SMS or an email with a link saying that go to this link, make a payment, or your KYC has expired, go to this link and give us the details, I would not click on that link, but I will go to that site directly myself, right? If it's from my bank and I get a message saying that the KYC has expired, I actually log into my bank account directly myself rather than clicking on the link, right? So unless I'm extremely sure of the source where it is coming from. So that is one aspect, like a very simple thing you can look at, right? Similarly, don't use your digital instruments where you don't trust the source, right? So if you are downloading a new app, for example, and you don't have any background of who the merchant is, who the app provider is. You don't have any feedback. It's probably something very new in the market. Just be a little bit more cautious in those senses. Similarly, when we are sitting outside using a public Wi-Fi, probably don't use your digital instrument in those kind of scenarios. Again, it's same principle you'll follow with your cash, right? The same thing you're doing in digitally, right? Very simple concepts again, that don't share your ATM pin, your password, OTP with anybody. Nobody would ever ask you that. Any legitimate person won't ask you those details. So never trust anybody who asks you those details, or never share those details, right? And keep your those aspects of your authentication, like a pin or your net banking password, different from your passwords in other sources, right? So that if any of your other accounts get compromised, people cannot hack into your digital accounts. Having said that, I think what great comfort I think all consumers should have is India has actually very, very stringent mechanism to prevent fraud. RBI has come up with a lot of such kind of mechanism, and all of our payment ecosystem players, whether it's banks, aggregators like us, schemes like Visa, Mastercard, all of us keep this as our top priority, right? So we are always working towards making sure the payments are safe and secure. So that should give you comfort. From your side, you follow the simple steps, and if despite all of that, let's say you find something is suspicious, right? Something you do not, you get a message that something got deducted from your account, or you don't recognize where the transaction is coming from. Anytime you see that, immediately report it, because your liability will go down as soon as you report to your issuer, right? So you let's, for example, in the worst case scenario, cards get stolen, you report it to the issuer. If the card gets misused after that, you have zero liability, right? A lot of protection for consumers is there from our government. So just you have to be very comfortable with that fact and just follow the simple steps. I think that will be really good for you to kind of understand and like drive the digital adoption.
I think you're right, right? Like I think you've mostly said, and for me, it's a takeaway. Click and never
Right, don't.
type and never click. I think that's a very clear mantra. Second, never share your details, OTP. I think that definitely makes sense. And third, report. I think
Yeah.
these three things for me, it's very clear. Like being a responsible financial citizen, right? Like if I have to put it like that. So thank you so much for that. Those points. To that note, you mentioned that RBI and other players in the industry are taking stringent efforts and measures to control fraud. So, would you like to share some, developments or stands which RBI has taken to ensure that the consumer is protected and we reduce fraud in the country overall?
Sure. So I think if you go back 10, 12 years, you'll see that India was one of the countries which introduced this second factor authentication. Like any online payment you're doing, there is an OTP that comes to you, you have to enter it, or there is some other mechanism through which you do it. This is mandated in India, right, to a large extent. So very few area countries which where it is mandated to this extent, right? That was step one. Even if you look at recently, very recent developments that is coming in, it is always keeping this consumer safety and security in mind, right? So, for example, the circular recently, which is going to actually come into effect from July, is around who can store your card details, right? Currently, if you go to any website, any merchant that you're doing a transaction, your card details can be stored by that merchant. I'll come to that. I mean, it's not like current methods are not completely secure. There are some security measures even currently there, but RBI is even making it slightly more regulated, stringent, saying that your card details, plain card details, can be stored only by the issuer banks or the networks, right? Nobody else in the ecosystem can store it, which means the points where this data, chances of data getting hacked and leaked, is minimized further. And the entities who can store the details are generally very heavily regulated, very heavily audited. So again, the trust of those details are even higher. So, but having said that, even today, right? So even today, if a merchant stores your card details, it's not like they just store it in a plain format and anybody can access it. Even today, there are guidelines, which is like by payment card industry, called PCI DSS guidelines, which mandates multiple steps a merchant has to take for before they can store the details. So in a post July world, those guidelines will also stay, and the tokenization that we are bringing in will also come into effect. So together it makes it much more secure. Similarly, if you look at other aspects, other recent regulations around subscription, right? So it is just giving the control back to the consumers, so that you know that, hey, you are creating a mandate, a subscription mandate. You have the option to go and delete it, pause it, edit it anytime you want. Thus creating those experience differences, right? So it's all about building that trust, giving you the control, making sure the underlying infrastructure is secure. So a lot of those steps are taken, right? So maybe one more example, if I have to pick, is the data localization, right? So the payment data, all your sensitive data cannot be stored outside of the country, right? So that again gives a lot of control, and you are basically the owner of your data. So that's kind of the mantra we are trying to drive.
Thank you so much for all the updates on sharing all the updates and how RBI takes the the safety measures aspect of transactions very seriously. To that I'd like to get into, I mean, you have so much experience, you worked for more than 20 years. I'd like to understand from you, what were certain measures you built when you were heading a payments team at Flipkart to ensure that the platform was secure, the consumers felt secure. I think that's a very Flipkart is looked up by a lot of business owners, right? Everybody looks up to them, how they've scaled. So I think that insight will be really helpful for the audience.
Yeah, actually, a good point. Yeah, I think it's important for us to understand how a matured organization, which is very focused on consumer experience, consumer safety, treats this kind of areas. Right. So, see, in payments, there are, as I said, because of our regulatory framework about second factor authentication, all those things, a lot of this is already taken care of, right? So, RBI, banks, all this is mostly taken care of by the ecosystem to a large extent. But having said that, in a large merchant like Flipkart, you are basically looking at multiple aspects when it comes to safety, right? So you're looking at, hey, the end consumer who is transacting gets a very secure, safe platform to transact on. You're looking at somebody is not misusing another person's data or instruments or any information, right? You're protecting the business against any frauds happening. So there are multiple aspects of it. So what we used to do in Flipkart is there used to be a centralized team called Trust and Safety, which used to look at all aspects of where a possibility of abuse or fraud can happen across the platform, including payments, including your sensitive data around addresses, all those things that are there, right? So if I give you an example, right? So sometimes you build experience for convenience, right? Sometimes you, for example, say that I'll make your wallet, I'll link your wallet to your account, and next time onwards I will make it one click experience because I know that you have done the authentication first time, right? So that's a very common experience that you build. But what additional checks we had put in place is that if I find, next time you log in, if I find something suspicious in your behavior, let's say you're logging in from a new device, you're logging in from a very new location that I've never seen, or your purchase behavior, your browse patterns are very different from what I had seen in the past, I would introduce a friction. I would either ask you to kind of verify your phone number again. I will ask you to kind of log into your account again, give a password. So multiple friction points I can introduce, right? So I can I may ask you to kind of relink that wallet again. So anytime you find something which you feel a little suspicious, you put additional friction to protect the consumer. But generally, like this is a balance, right? You always trying to keep safety and security in mind, at the same time build convenience with those constraints, right?
Okay, I'm sorry, there was a lag. I think that makes sense. I think I myself experience whenever I try to. It's an app which I'm using, and it's just not about an e-commerce app also, but even in apps like Google and Facebook, whenever you try to log in from a new device or something, you get a warning whether is it you or somebody else. So I
Absolutely.
think that as a consumer also, I feel secure that these things are taken seriously by websites where I'm going and giving my payment details on. So thank you so much for that insight. And that brings me to my last question, and that is mostly for our business owners and merchant community, which is that as an experienced leader in the payments industry, how do you think business owners should address security related concerns like data breaches, safe payments, etc., on their websites or apps?
Okay, great question. Yeah, I think I would look at this in maybe two dimensions, right? So one is you first of all keep the user in mind when you're designing an experience. What does that mean? That security is not just about the backend infrastructure that you're providing. You have to also earn the user's trust, give the user control, right? So a few good practices I can think of is, for example, if you're saving any data for the user, always take consent. Always tell the user that what you are going to use this data for, right? So if for example I'm storing your payment card details, I'm just using it for transaction, or is this data is going to be retained on the system? So give that information. The better you make this experience, actually it will be you can gain the trust of the new users more, right? And give user control of, if they don't want to save the data, if they want to come back and delete the data, give them an option to do that, right? So some of this actually builds a long-term trust in the user. And any like let's say some people opt out of it, right? So they don't save the data, and you as a business owner, you might be thinking, okay, the experience that will provide them will be suboptimal. But trust me, like the long term benefit you'll get by when like just getting the trust of the user and giving them the option, giving them the control, is far outweighs any like short term gaps that might be there, right? So that is one dimension I think you need to think about. Second dimension, which we always talk about in any software development, right? It's a principle called security by design, right? It's not an afterthought. So when you're making your platform initially, when you're designing your app, just think about this security aspect, data storage aspects from the beginning itself, right? It's not should not be something which you design and then build on top of it, right? Because see what happens when you're a startup, when you're a new company, there are thousands of things you're doing. So it is probably the motive to run faster, the bypass some of the things and come back to it later. That kind of intent would be there. But trust me, like if you think security first, that will be like again your reputational damage that can cause by a data breach or any such things would be far more like detrimental to your business than any short-term benefit you would have gotten from the speed, right? So, and when you're talking about security by design, what does that mean? How would you, as a small business owner, do that? My suggestion again here is take help of experts. There are a lot of security agency, a lot of third-party companies who can do audit of your system. They can guide the best practices. If you don't have a captive large engineering team or a large security team, then always take help of these experts, right? Maybe you focus on the core of your business and outsource some aspect of it, or take help of consultants, right? So just to give an example, many of our small business merchant partners actually do not capture the card details on their own website or page. They it comes to kind of they can kind of send the user to the PayU page and capture the details there, right? So that's one aspect of, hey, you are trusting your partner, in this case PayU, to have built a safe and secure system, and you are redirecting your user to do that. So that's one aspect of it, right? So similarly, a lot of these things you can do it. A lot of this like partners, experts you can take help of to design your system. Again, last point here is many times what happens is you might have done everything right, but let's say some other website, other app got compromised, right? The user information got leaked, and because of the fact that people generally use similar credentials across their different accounts, people can use the leaked credential to log into your account, right? So if you're a somebody who has sensitive data, provide financial information, financial services, just watch out for those kind of things as well. This goes back to the example I gave for Flipkart. Like even if the user has logged in and I find something suspicious, then I would put additional checks, additional frictions, right? Again, there are tools available to you in the market. There are experts available to you who can guide you this process. So these are the some of the aspects you should watch out for. I think this is a very condensed, short answer. I think it's a very long topic that we can talk through, but short answer in the interest of time.
No, I think that helped. I think there are clear four takeaways, as you said, like four dimensions to it, and as a business owner, you can go as deep as you want, and you should take care of these four hygiene checks for ensuring and long term. And this ensures long term trust. Long term trust leads to more customers coming back. More customers coming back means to higher revenues for everybody. So that's the goal for any business owner. So yeah, I definitely it makes sense. On that note, I think I'm done with my questions, but audience seems to have a lot of questions today. One of the very interesting questions, and very, I think, which I would like to know personally your opinion on, is that going by the preeminent role being played by digital payment systems in India, RBI gives the highest importance to security controls around it. But does it come at a cost of inconvenience being cost to end customers or merchants, like going to an extent, as you said, like there are multiple dimensions. It's so deep to think of when it comes to security. Does this come at a cost of an ecosystem which is not ready, and how do we strike balance on that?
Okay, very relevant question. I think let's break it down to three, four parts, right? So, first, security and safety is going to be our top priority, right? So, anytime you're designing policies, designing a system, you make certain trade-offs, and while making certain trade-offs, you figure out what is the topmost priority that you are actually aiming towards, and everything else has to work within those constraints. So it is absolutely clear to everybody in the payment ecosystem led by RBI that consumer safety, consumer security is our topmost priority. There is no compromise going to be made on that, right? So whether again banks, payment aggregators, networks, merchants, all of us keep that as our top priority, right? So will that create certain inconvenience? Probably yes. But again, let's understand that we are not talking about a very homogeneous group of consumers, right? If you look at India, it's very, very diverse set of users. It is probably power users like Neha, you and me. We spoke about how comfortable we are with digital payment, how frequently we use it. But there are also a lot of people who are either very new to it or are on the fence or have never tried it, right? So for us it is actually to protect them, right? It is to we mostly design our system policies to protect these new users so that they are not like part of any abuse or fraud in the system, right? So that's our top priority. So a lot of the things we spoke about, that RBI guidelines, is keeping that in mind. So will that cause any short-term discomfort till everybody is ready in the ecosystem to provide that experience? The answer is yes. But I think again, I'll go back. Like the long-term benefit of having that, I think far outweighs any short-term discomfort. Like the second factor, authentication. Like so, a lot of the merchants who are global who come to India, they say that hey, the payment approval rates or success rate, as we call it, are slightly less in India because there is a friction point of OTP coming in and you entering OTP. But if the friction point was not introduced, I think the number of people who are using digital payment today would have been far less. When you talk to people who are new to digital payment, they have this huge comfort that okay, there is an additional authentication that's happening, right? So that's one aspect. I think the last aspect of that question is again keeping this constraint in mind. What I earlier said, that keeping this constraint in mind, keeping this as our topmost priority, RBI has still given us enough opportunity to actually make the experience better, make it seamless, right? So there are a lot of ways we can again do alternate factor of authentication without making it a OTP based authentication. Like I actually strongly believe that tokenization that is coming to effect in July will lead to longer term better experience, better payment flows, which will be again might take the approval rate, success rate higher than what it is today. Like subscription again, like short term discomfort sorry, short term discomfort due to readiness of the ecosystem. But I think that again expands the landscape of where subscription can be used or who is offering with the subscription instruments, right? So long term, all of this is actually going to drive adoption by again bringing the trust factor.
Got that. I think because you spoke about better customer experience. I think one of the merchants have like our audiences have asked questions, and this is a very business specific question. Is that is providing better payment experience? How will that help me build customer loyalty?
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah, very important question, and maybe I'm a little biased here because I am in the payment industry. But what I generally like to talk about is don't look at payment as a just a transaction processing engine. Payment can be the experience that you provide on payments, right? Can be a differentiator, can be a competitive advantage, can lead to long-term business growth. So I generally use this phrase called payment as a growth driver, and I will give you two, three examples, right? Maybe just two examples. So one is on the refund side. So refunds is again you're part of entire payments journey. So refunds when there is a lot of anxiety from the user that when I'm returning the item, whether I get the money back, whether it is coming to me instantly or not, or will the money get stuck, right? So in again, you asked me about Flipkart. I'll go back to that example. In Flipkart, we actually emphasized on building a very seamless refund experience on three pillars, right? Being instant, being seamless, being flexible, right? So that means you can get the money to your account of choice, like basically your source account. You can get the money instantly, and you can get it without putting a lot of effort, right? So once you build this kind of experience, the users know that, hey, if there's something goes wrong in the product that is getting delivered and I want to return it, actually you have my back. I get the refund immediately, right? And interestingly, like some of the surveys and some of the studies have shown that people who go through a refund experience and have a great refund experience are more likely to come back and use your services than people who have never gone through a refund experience at all, right? So just it's counterintuitive that I actually liked your product, I didn't return it, but somebody else didn't like your product and returned it. The second person got a great refund experience, he's likely to come back than me, right? So slightly counterintuitive, but this tells you how payments can be like this experience can be actually a driver of user retention, user repeat purchase, business growth. Similarly, like you provide users offer to buy items on any affordable instrument, like you can ask them to, you can provide them this whole gamut of EMI products that PayU offers, for example, right? So you can see that is a business driver, again, business growth driver, because people's purchase behavior changes when they see they have access to the credit, access to this kind of instrument. So that can be another business driver. So again, there are multiple. I strongly believe that providing a better experience on the payments page is a differentiator, is a growth driver. For just sake of time, I'm just limiting it to the two examples.
I am with you on the instant refund piece. I, being a consumer myself, there are firms I definitely go to just in case I want to return my product and get my refund without thinking about when it's going to come. Do I open my bank statement? So it absolutely, I am a to two or three firms and I try to stick to them, even if it comes at a little cost to me. So I
Yeah.
think that makes absolutely. So that brings me to my last question because we are short on time now. So that question is, while speaking of financial literacy, should our first step towards this be through financial inclusion?
Sure, 100%. And a lot of us are actually taking significant steps in that direction. I think, Neha, you would know that PayU has recently launched something called a vernacular checkout page, right? So we are saying that why the merchant page or the payment page, anything should be restricted to only English, where a large part of India probably very comfortable in their own language, vernacular language, right? So we that is one aspect of inclusion. We are in fact also doing a lot of pilots to figure out how you can make your payments when like your networks are probably fluctuating, you have a low network, you don't have access to network. That is again consumer side. A lot of such initiatives are happening. On merchant side, we are trying to actually help offline merchants come to a digital platform, create a digital presence, generate leads for their business. So all these aspects are going on, right? So again, going back to affordability, I spoke about how having access to credit can be a game changer. There also, I think you can see a lot of. I don't want to restrict it to only PayU. A lot of ecosystem developments are happening on that, right? So earlier you used to only use your credit card for getting credit, right? You can now see a lot of this BNPL, cardless credit. Even you can get your debit card. You can use it for EMI products. A lot of this like initiatives are coming. We are all working towards that, right? Definitely, I think whoever asked this question is very relevant question. It's an objective of the entire industry to make sure that 100% India is digitized, are very comfortable with digital payment. We are all working towards that.
Yeah, I have recently started. We are getting a lot of, there's a lot of push from the industry players to expose more and more people to them. So yeah, on that note, thank you so much, everyone. I think we are out. We look forward to more sessions with you in the future, and the audience audience, once again, thank you for this time on a Friday after almost weekend. So I understand what you must be going through, all of you. And just as an update, we have another session at 1:30 starting, and it's on Indian digital landscape. I request you all to join us at the same link on LinkedIn. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you so much, Neha. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.